Hi, Tim Smith, welcoming you to RUHM, our podcast here at Sin in Newport, where we're here to expose to the world the great stories, people, places, and properties of Orange County. Today, I'm so thrilled to have a good friend, former NHL hockey player, and now entrepreneur, and we just want to dive into it. Thanks for being here, Scottie.
Tim, thanks for having me. First off, that intro is way better than most guys can do. I know this is, 7 or 8 podcasts you've done
This
now?
is probably 15 we've filmed. We've only released 5.
Okay, good. So I made the top 10.
Yeah.
That's great.
But based on your numbers, I need to have a lot more downloads if this is going to go anywhere.
I think you become a real G when your podcast hits 25,000.
25,000?
25,000 downloads. We'll work on it.
That'll be the G spot.
That's the G spot. for a G like you, that's the G spot.
Okay, so before we dive in, because my whole thing about this is I want people of the world that are all coming here in droves because this is the greatest place to live. Hence, you're here, right? Yeah. Growing up in West Alberta, Canada, coming here. But before we dive into that, I just want to ask you a few questions because I think that there's some things that will be common threads. So number one, throughout your life as an athlete, What's your superpower? You got to give me one.
Superpower. Well, I can fly for sure, especially on the weekends. No, listen, I think...
Because I know what I think your superpower is, looking outside in, but I want to see what you think.
Listen,
say.
Growing up, you just mentioned growing up, I grew up in Alberta, little tiny town, northern Alberta, blue-collar town, Fort McMurray. My parents are from the East Coast. Growing up there, not easy, right? Hardworking, fights at school, competitive, whether you're playing soccer or hockey, whatever you're doing, highly competitive amongst, your clique. But what separated me and what kind of drove me was competition, wanting to just be someone that, I wasn't the day before. I wanted to get better. I had, I was given luck, but through that, I was kind of challenges would come and I would conquer them and I would look forward to the next one. Often, my parents always said, okay, but the difference between you and your brother Brent, we'd get you up for school or for hockey practice at 6 a.m. We wouldn't have to tell you twice. You were already up if we had to wake you up at all. My brother would be still there hitting the alarm clock, kind of doing his thing. And that's like a lot of people, but I found it early to get up and do it. And I think that that's sort of a special little gift that, I was kind of born with.
Okay, so I would say to add on to that, so really just showing up is a big part of it. But I also get when you're talking, and this isn't where I was going at all, but
I just dove into it.
But you're it's that same thing, being consistent and intense about anything that's in front of you.
Yeah.
Have you found times in your life where you feel you didn't feel up to the task, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, those are moments of, you have to, look in the mirror type moments where, I when I was young, I was probably 12, 13, things in my hometown, you play soccer and you're highly competitive in that. You play baseball, you pick baseball up, you're playing starting shortstop, whatever. Golfing was fun. My dad brought me to the golf course when I was 8 years old. Loved it, couldn't keep me out of there. And then hockey, when I left my hometown, I was probably 12, I went to try out for a traveling team, highly competitive little tryout for.
So you're literally 6th grade.
I'm in 6th grade, and I'm driving 4 hours, with my buddy and his dad and my dad, and we're going to try out for these traveling teams.
Yeah.
Because we're from a tiny little town.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember back-to-back years, maybe even 3 in a row, going in as this out-of-town kid, small. I was a skinny little fucker. I was just kind of,
Yeah. And
I would get cut. I would be told in a dressing room with these coach that unfortunately you're not fit for the team. You're either too small or we're just going to go with these other kids. And I would drive 4 hours back and I would be just completely in utter sadness. And my dad would deal with it and he's like, hey, it's all right. You'll have a chance next year. We're going to go home. You'll play soccer for the summer. Don't worry about this hockey team. And I kept going back. And then the one year I got there and I was significantly better than everyone. And I said, this is the time. And I walked into the dressing room. I was probably 14 now. And the guy was like, wow, you're on our team this year.
So there's a principle to unpack there. So the 4-hour drive there, getting cut, would be easy to be like, this ain't my thing.
Yeah.
And this is multiple times getting cut. The 4-hour drive back there, supportive dad, but then like the drive, right? Because one of my basketball coaches said this, and I've thought about it. He's like, I don't care who you have around you. I don't care a coach. You want to be great. It's about you.
Yeah.
And the sooner you figure that out, it's about you, right? And your commitment to that. But it would have been easy for you to give that up. Like, what made you kept doing it? Was it the love? Was it the rejection? What was it?
Yeah, no, it's the love. But I feel like if there wasn't that rejection, if there wasn't that, authorial, like, you're not making this team, putting me into a state of like, F you. This is, I think I should be on this team. And, that sort of hearing that, and like the fact that it's still somewhere in my mind 30 years later is almost like, wow, do kids hear nowadays that they're not going to do something and put them in a state of like, I got to work harder, or I got to, yes, those kids are better than me. Or are we in this like sort of society where, a lot of kids are just given the first place medals or whatever? Like, that failure to me pushed me to be like this completely different, human being or athlete, and someone that like cherished new opportunities and wanted to learn more, wanted to figure out how to be better than someone or how to work harder. And I look back, and that failure was like that jump start for me.
That was a fuel. So during the off time, this was like, I didn't make it. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't fast enough. Did that drive you, and was that a thought for the fuel to work harder? Like, literally?
Yeah, no, it was. I started to, I learned how to, and then it's putting pieces together, right? It's not just like, okay, I got to be better.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm like in the gym doing what's new to me called the squat. And I'm like, 12 or 13, 14. And at that time, no one worked it. Like, it was just, juice monkeys in there just working out, all steroided up. And I'm in my hometown, this rough town. And there I am, this little skinny 13, 14-year-old kid in there, like working on a squat rack and doing lunges. And like, no one did that back then.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the generation of like, okay, now there's nutrition you're going to start to learn about. There's all this sort of thing. But at that moment was like, okay, how do I be better? I'm in a small town. I have odds against me. The book, The Outliers. We can get into that too, which is a great book, which I'm a late birthday.
Yeah.
Playing against older, stronger kids, right? I'm an October birthday.
Yeah.
Cutoffs for, this age group is January 1st. Well, this January 1st born kid is 10 months bigger and stronger than me. So I'm a disadvantage there as well.
Yeah.
So there's kind of those things that get ingrained in you that, you got to figure out early if
Did you have thoughts then? Like when's the first time you legitimately had a thought like, I'm going to actually be in the NHL? Like, were you thinking that when you were 11 and 12, getting cut, going back, doing that? Or was that...
NHL, no. In Canada, the NHL is a complete pipe dream. It's like, very rarely are you able to go. Like, I wasn't able to go to just an NHL game. Like, the Anaheim Ducks live, or, they live
20 minutes.
5 minutes from us here in the studio. So even seeing them at a coffee shop to young kids who like hockey would be like kind of the norm.
Yeah.
Well, I was, 5 hours away. It's in Canada, the hockey season's in the middle of winter. Your odds of running into like Connor McDavid at a coffee shop is pretty low.
Yeah.
Going to a game, I might have went to 5 games, in my life. Remember seeing Gretzky when I was a kid, and the Oilers, Edmonton Oilers were like this, it was like, holy shit, this is the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
It's a dream, but no, never growing up were you like, I'm playing in the NHL. You had the posters on your walls. You had the Jenna Jameson posters too, of course, but you had the posters.
Which is where I was thinking was your superpower.
Yeah, totally. Well, yes, for sure. Hockey was a hobby. So listen, it was a complete, dream, and then became reality as like, all of a sudden coaches are starting to be like, hey, so, he's only 14, but we're going to play him with the 17, 18-year-old kids because, well, we want to win some games, and we also think he can handle it. And then so I started to like progress. And then at 16, 17, things get kind of honed in on talent, and you get put in basically a pool of like world-class kids at that age. And I was like seeing my name, in the top 5, top 10 of these charts, and being like, holy shit, this is like, I'm 2 years from the NHL draft or 3 years from the NHL draft, and they have me pegged to be a top 10 draft pick. So you're like, no, now I really got to take things serious,
You know how you have those few moments in life that like you could bring us back to where you're like, okay, this was like pivotal. Was it when you made the team when you were 14 or?
You know what? I think it probably came from my parents, like giving me the confidence to, like, hey, like the next step for this is to move away. And I'm in grade 9 or grade 10. Like the next steps to move away and size yourself up from what's normal to you here. And like, you're comfortable here. You have all your friends you grew up with. Like there's an opportunity of you to move away. And I moved to British Columbia, a little tiny town, Kamloops in interior BC, beautiful place. And something so new, but now's the time. Like if you want to size up, go kick the shit out of these kids and prove, you can play. And I think at that moment, that sort of like, that curiosity and that, that space that was new to me. When I got there and I felt comfortable and I felt like, wow, okay, now I really can put on, a show. That sort of challenge was what really separated me from, okay, this is close. Now I got to just go. So.
And was that difficult for your parents? Obviously,
Yeah,
you're how old when you moved away?
Still cry every time my mom leaves me. It's
Really?
fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every time my mom comes to see me, hug and kiss, and she'll have tears, and my dad will just shake his head. And when I send her off on an airport or I'm leaving, it's like full blown waterworks, and I'm like, still, Mom, we still do this. Like it's crazy, but yeah, like it was hard. For sure, it was hard. Yeah. Hard for me, like my brother was 2.5 years younger than me. Since I was 16, I haven't really lived like near him, basically. Still tight, still, talk all the time, but that's not normal for most kids, right? Like you have young kids. It's like,
Yeah.
can you imagine in 4 or 5 years, your boys?
No, I talk to parents all the time that like, oh, we're sending our kid to boarding school. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
selfishly, like never.
Yeah,
gonna
but you're like,
happen.
but we live in Southern Cal.
Yeah.
Like, how much trouble are they going to get in here?
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
where you grew up, where I grew up, it's like we need to get these kids kind of out of here because like they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of trouble around. So I understand, like, okay, let's ship them to an academy somewhere, and a lot of my friends did. In fact, TJ, who I brought up earlier to you, his face is all over the billboards in my hometown. He's a great realtor.
Yeah.
He's killed it.
Shout out to TJ
Yeah,
if you're
TJ
looking to
Campbell.
sell or buy TJ Campbell
Like Campbell
in
Soupy.
in what town?
He'll sell you anything anywhere, so you're good.
Okay, good.
No, but he left in grade 9. Like he didn't do high school with us that year that I was there, because there was a better path to whether it was playing college hockey or just kind of like a new challenge and getting out of our hometown, which can kind of chew you up a little bit. So
Going back to the path, because this is a little new to me. In hockey, you're not looking to go to college then the pros. Like you're looking to go to the pros as soon as you can get picked up by the pros, right?
yeah, we just
Is that how it is?
bypass college.
Yeah.
We used to. Now college is a very competitive landscape for kids. And for example, my little guy Beckham, who's 6 months old, I would want him to go to college.
Yeah.
Living in the United States now and seeing how all you guys basically have camaraderie amongst, those peers that you went to school with, and how that carries on your whole life. You always will go to like your college football game or hockey game. Your kids will wear those t-shirts. Thanksgiving is, kids come back from their colleges and spend time with their family. That sort of tradition it's Canada's not on that program. I like it. And I think professional junior was great for me to get to the NHL. But I hope major junior coaches and management aren't watching this, but now I would say college, because of that education aspect, because it's still highly competitive. And the United States has done an incredible job with their hockey program. Like they're up to par right now. If there was an Olympics and they let the NHL guys play, they haven't in two Olympics, but if they went head to head, the US is very, very on point now with Canada, and we've always kind of had an edge on them.
So go back to the juniors.
Yeah.
So when did it become like a reality? Like, okay, you're going in the draft, right? So you start making an influence and an impact. What age were you, and what did that look like going from there to being professional?
Yeah. So at 17 years old, my first year away from my family, I started to like excel at that professional junior level. And what that means is, like, as a rookie, I was leading scoring throughout the year, and it was like, holy shit, hockey's fun. I'm playing with these great players on my team. Our team was great. And then you're basically 2 years away from the NHL draft, and you're watching guys you're playing against who have already been drafted and who've already signed these contracts, and you're like, I got this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, at 18, by 18, I was like, next year, my family and I are going to be in Toronto for the draft, and if I stay healthy and I don't fuck this up,
Yeah.
I'm going to have a chance to be drafted in the NHL, which was a pipe dream 6 years ago at 12. But now at 18, pro sports is weird. You need the luck, you need the coaching, you need the right parents.
Yeah.
You need the right support group, and that's from every walk of life. But it's so many different aspects can happen that can either make it happen or not let it happen.
So my next door neighbor in Monarch, his son got picked up by the Yankees a couple years ago. Got 3 sons. They're all awesome baseball players. And I said, what was the difference? Because everybody around here in Newport Beach is like, oh, my kid's going to go pro. And he said at like age 13 or 14, he said 2 things. My wife was an absolute beast at supporting and making sure, helping all the pieces work, giving him all the opportunities. But then second, once he got to a certain level, he started just to separate from the pack. Like he wasn't out there partying. He was like, this became a real thing, right?
Yeah.
And so there's like this thing, which is interesting because I think all parents like have this idea. You're like, come on, like the chances of them going pro. Okay, so go back to that draft when you got drafted.
Yeah, 2002 was in Toronto. Had my family there. I was kind of pegged in that 5 to 10 spot. And night before the draft was great because I was at actually Wayne Gretzky's restaurant. He had a restaurant at the time in Toronto. I had all my family there. I actually had about 40 people there who were all family from Newfoundland. Newfoundland's a very unique place, but we have a huge family. My dad's like 15 kids. My mom's 9.
Wow.
I had cousins and everyone in Ontario that all came, and like I had a whole section at the draft.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're all at this bar, and I was 18, not legal to drink. 19's the age, but we were up there having a beer. And Gretzky walked in with my World Junior Team Canada coach. This guy Stan Butler. He used to call me the Devil Boy because we would always have fun. Like our tournaments would be, sneaking beers in the room. We're having fun. Anyway.
Back to the superpower I thought we were talking about.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, Stan, my dad's like, hey, Stan, your coach just walked in with Gretz. And I'm like, oh, no way, I'll go say hi. So I'm, 18 or something.
Had you met Gretzky before?
I had never met him, no.
Yeah.
So when I walked up and introduced myself, Stan was like, Devil Boy, sit down. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I sit down, and I'm like, Wayne, hey, Scotty's like, I know who you are. And I'm like, this is a pretty nice establishment you got here, And then I'm like, I got to tell you a story. My mom, who's sitting over there, and my mom's young. She's 61. She's a young soul. She has a story of when she was pregnant with me walking through the airport in Edmonton. And the Oilers back then used to fly commercial. And this was Wayne's heyday, like the early 80s was when they were good. And my mom was pregnant, waiting for her flight with my dad, and Gretz had kind of came by and hey, oh my God, you're pregnant. And it kind of touched her belly. That's her claim was like.
No way.
So maybe that's my power. I don't know.
Maybe he anointed you.
Yeah. So, and I told him this. He ended up coaching me, and now I golfed with him a couple of weeks ago twice, and I always kind of tell that story because it's cool, amongst other stories with Wayne. Great guy, and obviously the GOAT in hockey. So that happened, and they got to meet my folks, and the next day is the draft, and 6th overall to Nashville. One of my best friends who also lives here in Newport Beach, Joffrey Lupul, was 7th overall to the Ducks.
Yeah.
Which, if we're going to be full circle here, is why I'm a Newport Beach resident, is because Lupul got, drafted to the Ducks and lived here for 10 years. And I used to come down and hang out at his beach house on 38th Street.
Yeah.
And we used to have lots of fun there, lots of July 4th parties, lots of Labor Day parties. And
see, this is plugging OC, right? You lived everywhere.
Well, I mean,
you came down.
Yeah.
You're like, why wouldn't I live down
it's
here?
Still, as you say in your videos and the parodies that you have, they're great videos, by the way. It's still a hidden gem. Not many people. We're finally starting to kind of give away our secrets down here.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for us in my 23-year career is COVID made people really think about how they want to live and where they want to live. And with like the uncertainty, with the homeless, with the issues, like now we've seen a 40% increase in out-of-state buyers since COVID started of second homes. People are like, I want safety, I want climate, I want lifestyle, and it's got it all, and it's getting better and better. So hockey, you get drafted. I find that like on a lot of the people I talk to, professional athletes, there was like a welcome to the NHL moment. Did you have one of those moments where it was like, okay, on the ice, whatever, in a game, you had that moment?
Yeah, for sure.
What
most
was that
guys,
moment?
you ask most guys, it's probably the same sort of situation, and so it takes some guys maybe longer than others.
Yeah.
But I was 19. I signed my first contract. Like, getting drafted is one thing, obviously, right? Like if your buddy down the street's kid's getting drafted to the MLB, it's like, congrats. Like, now go make the team. Right?
Yeah. Right.
It's one thing to get drafted, and it's one thing to be like a solidified pro, right? And that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame is another pipe dream.
Yeah.
Stay a national leaguer, against all the elements, people trying to take your job, take your head off, whatever the case may be. So I was 19. I signed my first contract on my 19th birthday. I was playing in Nashville, and the first road trip was to Long Island, New Jersey, and then New York. So the Rangers. And first game was in Long Island, played there. It was a whirlwind, like, just holy shit, this is fast, this is crazy. I had to put money on the board, which means anytime it's like your birthday or your family's in town, you grab the dry erase marker, and on the whiteboard you put up $1,000. And if the team wins that game, the $1,000 goes to the team fine fund, which is used to dinners, parties, gifts, whatever the case, and give it to the trainers. So I hadn't got a paycheck yet, and the trainer, Frosty, who's my good buddy, was like, I'm like, how much money do I put up? And he's like, you're a first rounder. You're gonna have to put up a lot. I'm like, what? So he's like, you got to put up at least 5,000. I'm like, holy shit, $5,000. So
you're like, I haven't made any
and then
money
he's
yet.
like, but 5,000. This is what would be classy, is 5,000 for the team and 5,000 for the trainers. I'm like, it's 10 grand, 10 grand right off the hop. I'm like, okay. So I put it up there. We win the game, and that's neither here nor there, paying that. And next game was against Marty Brodeur and the New Jersey Devils, who just won the Stanley Cup in 2002. And I was like, wow, these are the champs, and go in there. We got our asses kicked. I hit the post, which was, I'm like 2-on-1. I hit the post, and I'm like, God, now then you're fighting it a little bit. Third game, MSG, Madison Square Garden. Never been there in my life.
Yeah.
Walking up the ramp, like, for people that don't know, like, MSG is like, it's 8 stories above the ground, right? Like the ice surfaces. So you walk up this massive ramp to get to the dressing rooms. And when you get up there, you look, and it's like Holyfield and Mike Tyson, and then like, your Madonna back in the day, and then Elvis, and all these people that have played there. There's photos on the walls walking into the dressing room. And I'm like, this is badass.
Yeah.
And so we get geared up for the game, and my agent at the time was in town. And this is the last game of the road trip, and I play in the first period. I'm talking, Rangers had an all-star lineup of like Pavel Bure, Eric Lindros, Mark Messier, Brian Leach, Mike Richter, the goalies, Hall of Fame goalie. And, you know, we were just Nashville, small little team.
Yeah.
Anyway, first period, puck drop in our own zone. And I beat like everyone off the draw to this puck, and I poke it out of the zone, and I get a race for the puck. I have a breakaway from my own zone, basically, on Mike Richter, who's a Hall of Fame goalie.
Yeah.
And I blast one, you know, up above his glove, and it's like it couldn't have been more of a perfect shot.
Yeah.
Perfect goal.
Yeah.
And, you know, at MSG, and I like fall into the glass in the corner, and I'm just losing my mind. And that, I always look back, it's like my one, like, holy shit, you're in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
So that was,
So take us through just kind of a brief recap. How many years in the NHL? What other teams?
Yeah. So long stretch. If you want to learn about that whole thing, you can listen to my podcast,
Yeah.
Missing Curfew.
Yeah.
Because we talk hockey and stories all day long. But I played 16, just over 16 years on 7 teams. So you talk about a journey of like ups and downs and injuries and success. Never won a Stanley Cup. I made it to the conference finals twice. Once in Philadelphia for the Flyers, and then once in St. Louis. People often ask, well, where's your favorite place, right, to play and live? I played in great cities: Nashville, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Florida, which is the South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, which almost ended my career because Miami was so close. St. Louis, Columbus for a cup of coffee. But St. Louis to me was at the latter part of my career. We had a great team, great guys. I was like at the point in my career where I'm like, all right, this is, you know, I'm mid-30s. I'm the oldest guy on my team. What are you going to do to stay in the league? You know, enjoy every time you get to the rink. Be great with the young players because they will be the ones carrying on like what you teach them.
Yeah.
And I was just, you know, I took pride in being what we call glue guy, being like a fucking guy that showed up and played hard, whether it was for me or for my teammates or for the fans. I played a certain way. I never changed that way. And I just, road trips were great because I knew like these private birds and these dinners with the boys, this is what guys miss when they leave.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that until this like curtain just is closing and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like this is 16 years like gone by like that.
Yeah.
And now, you know, now I'm going to sit on podcasts and talk about my story and what's next. But it's like, enjoy that to the fucking max.
Yeah.
Because not many guys have a chance to leave on their own terms.
Yeah.
You know, our friend Ryan Getzlaf
Yep.
left on his own terms. There's maybe one guy a year in the NHL that gets to do that.
Yeah.
So like cherish it. You know, I tried to continue to play. After St. Louis, I was at a tryout in Edmonton for my hometown team, my team I grew up watching. My knee blew up. I got it fixed. I lived in Newport. Vinny Smith, thanks for the beach house. And listen, I rehabbed my knee the whole year. It was the first year I didn't play.
Yeah.
St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup.
Oh,
So the first year I
I
left
like
the game,
was looking that up last night. And I
the
was
first
thinking
year I
that was
left the game, which I was
Yeah.
rehabbing to come back and play, but it was a pretty significant injury. My squad goes and wins the cup with 15 out of the 20 guys were my teammates the year before. I had just, the day they won the cup, I win the Big Canyon member guest.
Yeah.
I leave the trophy with my playing partner who had to fly home, Blano, and I go to Vegas to meet the guys with the Stanley Cup. They all were like, get over here. This is yours just as much as it's ours. I'm like, well, I just won my trophy. Look at this. And I got on a fucking late night flight, you know, a Southwest bird at 10 o'clock. I land. I go to meet these boys at Omnia as they're walking in at the XS, as they're walking into Omnia, and I see the silver mug. And if anyone's ever seen the Stanley Cup up close, it's a pretty special thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm seeing my best buddies carry this thing, and I was so happy, but I was so fucking mad and sad. And it
Yeah.
was just a cool moment. And they brought it into the club, and then we had it the next day at a pool party. I never touched it because the you know, they say if you ever want to win this thing, don't touch it. It's not yours yet, you know. So who knows if I ever get into coaching management.
yeah.
You just don't want to fuck with it.
Yeah, for sure. The silver
Great,
mug. Never
great,
touch
great.
the silver
You
mug.
can't touch the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
It's a full on thing.
Yeah.
But I stared at it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful piece of metal. Yeah.
Okay, so the superpower I was going to say, because we met in Cabo, I think, at El Dorado, right? Which
That's right.
gets us into now, I meet a former professional hockey player. That's not my cup of tea, but one of the things that what I picked up from you and heard about you before we really met was your ability to connect with people.
Yeah.
And not only that, like, you're charismatic, you're fun, you're a good friend, like, you know how to connect. And that's what I've seen and I'm sure that transition, but I would say that would be what I would see as your superpower. Like, your emotional intelligence,
Of course.
besides all that,
Appreciate that too.
is like up here. I don't know how you did in school, which is probably irrelevant. And I still feel that way for my kids. I'm like, I don't know. I can't draw the relationship between, I think there's this whole thing with academic obsolescence. You just keep on going more and more to work for somebody else. So that's what I saw. But now, so we're finished with hockey. You're doing a lot of things, podcasts, you're doing some real estate stuff. You got a family office. I see a lot of people, once they see success at that level, to go achieve it somewhere else is not simple. No. Well, maybe it's simple. It's not easy, right? Like, you can apply the principles. So let's talk about that, because I think you've done a great job, and I think you're still in the process of doing it. And one of the last guests we had, and I think this goes across the board, not just with being a professional athlete, is you have to re-identify and rebuild yourself as something totally new. Yeah. Right? Principles are the same, but it's not easy to do. So what would you say, like, I mean, what's the next mountain? And what are you finding that's applicable, the principles you're learning, and what are the challenges?
So that's just loaded of a question, and it couldn't be more significant to athletes as it is to anyone on the planet. Right. Like, you master something that you grew up with, and from birth you are you're a hockey player.
Well, go back, because you just said mastery, and I just want to stop, because I think there's a real, and going back to outliers. Yeah. So what does it mean to have mastery in your field, and what does that take? Like, give a few principles in your opinion.
Like the club of the NHL is over 600 players, right? Worldwide. You need to be so many things to be part of that 600 players. To be one, and to be acknowledged as one, and when someone looks at you and says, this guy's a professional baseball player, he's a professional hockey player, that sort of title means that you have to carry yourself a certain way. You have to evolve. You need to stay on top of it, because people are trying to continually take your job or take you down. It's very rarely are they like just gifting you something. So there's so many of those, like, moving parts. Now, I guess to answer that question, it's awesome as it is, difficult. The difficult part really starts to happen mentally with athletes as they leave the game. I had a lot of moving parts when I left the game. I went and played hockey in Switzerland for a year because I still loved the game. And I felt like I wasn't done. Although the NHL was done, I said, I want to go see the world. Switzerland, saw the world. My beautiful girlfriend, Christina, comes over and says she's pregnant with our first kid. I was like, at first I was like, holy shit, okay, now this is a new phase.
What year is this? This is 2000.
This is in November, before COVID happened.
So 2019.
COVID happened in February of what? No, COVID happened February of 19.
Yeah.
So this was November.
No, February of 20.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So February of 19, and I then was like focused on, okay, my next phase of life now is going to be a father, which is the best thing ever of all time. I always loved looking at my teammates' kids come in the dressing room, and I always admired that. Although I said, how the hell do you guys be a professional athlete
and do it?
Do it, because that is now as a dad of two young ones, to be a master or a professional where you got to give to 20 guys daily for one common goal every calendar season to win a Stanley Cup. How do you do it and still be a great partner, great father? It's hard. That is where you need a rock star girl.
Yeah.
You need, great communication, and you need sleep. You need sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was, at the moment, I was ready to move on from hockey, although still I wish I could play. I think I can play. But
Yeah.
I was ready to accept the next phase, which was kids. I give so much credit to the journey I've had with Christina and our two beautiful kids. And then I also would say this phase of exploration and curiosity of what's next. I had a life coach for about a year. Her name's Megan. She's out of New York, and she and I would talk once a week. This was during COVID now too. So this is all Zooming and
yeah.
And man, it was starting from the basics. Strengths, weaknesses, what's your hobbies, what time do you get up, what time do you go to bed? And then putting this kind of a master plan on okay, training camp is in September. It's June. How do you get your body ready for September? Okay, but that's being an athlete. That's what I knew.
Yeah.
Now it's this is the game plan.
Yeah.
This is where we need to get you, what is it? You want to make, is making money what it needs to be? Is being a good father what you want to do, and putting the cash aside, whatever. And I was I set these goals. I'm okay, I want to make $8,000 a month. I want to, yes, be a great father and spend, 2 hours, 2 hours in the morning with my kid, and then find a way to stay in shape because my body's been beat up. I want to, take care of all the old injuries that I've had. I want to meet new people. I want to travel still because I played hockey forever. I never got to do some of these things. So I mapped out all these things. And it was when I found that, when I kind of put those little pieces in place, that things started to kind of happen. Now, when I say things started to happen,
but this isn't totally different than when you were 12. And
know.
You're I'm piecing it together.
Yeah.
Right? You're piecing it together.
Yeah, of course.
But a couple of things that you said, because I've seen it, you got to have a vision for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You got to just like if you're building a house, you get an architect, you build a plan. Generally, the plan's going to change. Then you piece it down to your daily accountability checklist of whatever you got to do. 2 hours with the kids, work on the injuries. What's my morning routine, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the real thing. And you're still new in this new venture, right? You're
not even 3 years.
3 years in.
Yeah. It's so it was exactly that path. But then when I say, if I was to give anyone some advice leaving the game, it's figure out what's important. Figure out what your strengths were when you played. Figure out how those strengths can benefit you in finding the next phase or whatever it is. And take care of you first, right? Everything was on you when you played. You had to show up this time. You had to block this shot. You had to, go get that MRI or, ice your knee. You had to do a lot.
Yeah.
Take care of you when you leave. And then, put the game plan together. And so when I say things started to happen, my best boy, Shane O'Brien, and he had left the game 2 years, probably 3 years before me, and started to do some media work. And he always wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And I always kept saying, I want to continue to play, right? But he was well, I know when we're done, it's going to be you and me, and we'll get one other guy. We can make this fucking work, right? So
yeah.
So I jumped into that. That was my first thing to stay in hockey, and it was during COVID. It was in August when the NHL brought the play back in, and they did a playoffs. We did this, we started missing curfew with our boy Jimmy Hayes in Boston, and we did a weekly show, and then from there, I'm okay, I got to build this. Okay, what's our logo going to be? The name I always had. I had Missing Curfew as this name. I'm I fucking got the perfect name for this, right? Because this is how we live.
Why? What's so what's Missing Curfew really mean?
It was more of the guys. So our MO when we played is we had fun. We lived in Newport Beach.
Yeah.
We threw great July 4th parties.
Yeah.
We had a Sprinter van that was going back and forth up to LA for a concert or dinners. If our team, when I bring the Florida Panthers to town, we played LA, I'd have the Sprinter van and my driver Dylan from here come pick us up after the game. we're going, dinner at Tao or whatever. We're just bouncing around. And so anyway, always had to get the guys dialed in. There would be a chance.
Missing curfew is really like a theme of like, dude, like drink the best wine, use the good candles, enjoy the life that you're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like missing curfew. What does it mean? People often say, what does it mean? I'm like, it means like, yeah, you went out and had fun, but you show up the next day and you're an absolute pro. Basically, if you go out with the boys, you get up with the men. It's a typical saying that
go out with the boys, get up with the men.
Right?
Yeah. Never let it impact.
What you
do.
Button yourself. I'll tell a kid like, I'll meet these young, cool kids, right, who get drafted high and they come in and I'm like, I know they're going to be on our team, right? The coach would be like, hey, this is our new kid. Like, take care of him, whatever, right? So I'll see how he's like, acting around all the older guys. And, I'll know if we go out for beers the night before and he shows up and I'm looking at him and he hasn't maybe showered or he looks like, his eyes are a little glossy. And I'll be like, hey, do I look like I went out last night? And they're like, no, how do you do it? I'm like, you need to learn how to do this fast because you don't want to give it away if like like have a shower, freshen up. When you can be here first, get on a bike, but do that when you're fresh too. So it's not like all of a sudden you just change. Like learn these little habits now, and it's gonna make you. It'll make you a pro. You'll learn how to be a pro. So those sort of tricks I learned from older guys. Right? Like you need to share this kind of knowledge in the dressing room. You learn so much in the dressing room. It's a very special place.
It is, and for anybody that hasn't done it at your level, it's just got to be an epic.
And hockey. I mean, hockey's way different than any other sport. We are normal fucking guys.
Yeah.
Throw F-bombs around. I hope we can swear on this podcast.
Absolutely.
We're normal guys. We were raised in very like, when I say blue collar for me, very like ordinary, hardworking parents, loving, situations, but competitive guys playing a sport that is incredible.
Yeah.
It's
but give a little snapshot. So mom and dad, you say blue collar. What'd your dad do? What'd your mom do? Education-wise?
So they were very young when they met. My mom worked in a grocery store in Little Island, Belle Island, Newfoundland when she was 12. She was in charge of a grocery store right next to her house.
Yeah.
Charging 5 cents for milk and doing her thing. Like knew how to work a till and how to stock the shelves. And she was just a hardworking girl. And my dad grew up as an oldest boy in a big family, and his old man ran a gas station and a garage. So my dad at, let's call it 14, 15, needed to help his old man. So he dropped out of high school and started working as the head guy in my dad's gas shop, and my grandfather's. Yeah. And my grandfather, like, I knew he used to have fun and do his thing. So my dad, there's a lot of responsibility on my dad to lock things up. And So they met very young and dated from that age. My dad moved out to Alberta, all the way across Canada for a job in the oil and gas business. Started as a welder and got his trade as that, and finished high school going to night classes. And then brought my mom over at 18 years old on her first flight she'd ever been on, and with no return ticket. And they stayed there. I was born shortly thereafter. They got married. We had my brother, and we lived this very, ordinary life in a small.
But it's like it's funny how common the theme is. Like, small town, lots of sacrifices, work hard, and you're like the seed, the offspring of that, right? And it took like the family in the village. Even you go back to the draft, you had the community, like you have more people there, right, than anybody. Okay, so going back to what you're doing now, what's the next 5 years look like?
Yeah, so I often say like, Christina drives her nuts because I'm like, we need to play. Like, what like Izzy's in school. We're now looking at schools, thank you. And we're like, so this was when she was born, she's like, we have time. I'm like, yeah, but time goes. It's nice to have a little plan because soon enough we're looking at school. So we started the podcast, and the podcast has taken a life of its own. And we do traveling shows now where we call it the fella tour. Fella is like our trademark term for like guy's guy. Yeah. You're a good fella, right? Whatever, fella, what's up? And we go around, and now like we once were athletes, and now we're missing curfew to our fans, and we have tons of them, right? It's kind of a cool thing. We show up to an arena, we do a live show in front of 100 people, and then we go into this arena, and guys are like, up dog, what's up, Bobes? Like it's fun, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then I've learned so much on building a brand, having employees, pitching, right? Like, pitching our why our brand, why you should invest in our brand, and how we separate ourselves from other people, and creating a show and dealing with a partner. It's been a life lesson, something that I take hockey and I bring it into there. So the plan with that is, really exciting stuff in the near future for us, doing some stuff with TNT. We both have like segments on NHL Network that we do live hits, basically in a nice studio like this. We're not too far away. We're right next to John Wayne Airport. And it's my boy Al Hall who keeps his boat on your...
Yeah.
By the way, you got to have Al sit in this seat. He's got a great story too.
Okay.
And so the podcast, man, has been great. And it's been a journey. Ultimate goal with that, I think, is to have a Missing Curfew show on TNT or a ESPN platform. People need to take in more on hockey because it's a beautiful sport and not enough people with personality to tell it.
Is that whole community that was at the draft, are they all big fans of Missing Curfew?
Oh yeah. It's the typical 25 to 45-year-old male who drinks beer when their kids go to sleep and they watch all the highlights in hockey in their garage. And it's that's full on, like they love it.
Yeah. So a couple of the things we went back to, there's a few other things right around. Number one, that's one venture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you get like to a certain point in your life, and I'm starting to figure this out because I didn't grow up with a lot and I built up this business and I didn't have a ton of mentors telling me the right things to do, kind of follow my voice, did it. But now I'm in a different scenario where I'm seeing way different deals, more opportunities, my relationships that I've worked for years. I'm seeing these opportunities. You're now working, you kind of have a family office.
Yeah.
You got some real estate stuff that we're working on together that we're going to grow through your relationships. And that's where I think you're a very special human being, because everybody that knows Scottie loves Scottie.
Yeah.
Right. And he's I'm
not going to say yes, but I
yeah,
appreciate
but
that.
You are, right? Like
it's
everybody
building
you
the
know,
relationships and leaning on, answering your phone, being that guy people can count on. And always trying to learn and evolve and use your strengths and what strengths were when you were a kid and whatever got you to where you are. Use that in the next phase would be something I'd tell a guy leaving the game of hockey. So, touching on the real estate stuff, Discovery Land property, which is an amazing.
I think a lot of people know, but give like a little snapshot of what the Discovery Land company is and does.
Yeah, listen. There's only one Discovery Land property, and there's only one visionary, Mike Melman, who used a network and used his passion for development and a lifestyle like no other to build these communities and this membership in the best areas of the world. And I think we're almost going on 30 properties all over the world, in Saudi Arabia now, in Europe, Mexico, all over the Caribbean, and parts of the country in the U.S. where there's mountains, other places where there's oceans, Tennessee, Texas. So,
but just to give everybody a little context, I'm in real estate. That's been my career. They've built communities that are membership communities.
Yeah.
It's almost like summer camp for adults.
Yeah.
You go in there, whether it's a golf community in Cabo or in Hawaii, or a private ski resort community in Big Sky, Montana.
Yeah.
Like they do it like no other. And I don't think it's been a simple path for Melbourne.
No,
right?
No, it hasn't.
And it took some time to really get it rolling. But now you look at it, and I don't know what the newest average is. Within their 30 communities, the average owner has something like 3.2 properties within their communities.
Yeah.
It's like genius, right?
Yeah, it really is.
It's like there's nothing like it that, and I think a lot of people try. I was up in Park City in Deer Valley, and we were looking at some real estate stuff, and the realtors kept on saying, "Oh yeah, we got a Discovery Land Company project." So I text JJ. JJ's like, "I don't know what they're talking about." Everybody wants to pose as like we're doing this, but it's not the same.
No. So you touch on it. It's, it's almost like in real estate, right? It's like, when is the time to buy? when is can you ever time a market?
What's the answer to that?
It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Although,
wait, let's just stop there real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had this property as you're starting a family.
Yeah.
This property down on Newport Island that was epic, right?
Yeah, of course.
We
I put my heart and
talking
soul
about
into it.
timing though. So less than a year prior, we sold 3 new houses on the island bayfront that were as nice, if not better, between 5.9 and 6.4. You and I were talking, and we kind of talked about a 5.995 number for a minute, then a 6.995 number, and there was no perfect time to move. And then we talked about maybe we should go 7.995. And if you remember, I think this was like the last 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
And then I called you and I'm like, Scottie, if there was ever a time to get a number that nobody's ever seen, let's try for 8.995. And we ended up listing it and you got 8.875.
I got it. Yeah. I think we settled at 8.8, but it wasn't for a lack of, when the offer first came in, I'm like, holy shit. I think they offered it was 8.3 or 8.4.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's rock and roll. You're like,
Yeah.
we're not accepting that. Let's hit them with
even
8.
though less than a year prior, 3 homes that were as nice sold in the 5.9 to 6.4 range.
For a third.
This was we were playing with house money, which we both knew.
And I'll tell you this, and
then we end up selling it at 8.875.
8.875. But I have to now shine light on your listeners that are from maybe my following who don't know you much.
Yeah.
You had, I leaned on you with Christina because I was like, listen, we're having this second kid. I built this dream home I have on the bayfront, right? It has a park next to it. It's a beautiful property, and I could probably live in there with 2 young kids.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of thinking I need a little bit more space.
Yeah.
And you were right, timing it and maybe hey, now's the time. But I had to really dig into you, and you articulated this whole scenario of listen, this is how we can maybe set this up. We'll focus on what's out there in more of a family community that is just as nice, something that makes you feel like you're walking into a new home. But this piece of property is so unique that let me show you what we can do with this. And I was like, God, okay, but there's a chance we're going to put this out there and I'm not going to accept anything.
Yeah.
And then you
which was okay
magic
though, but I'm
work.
like, let's just try.
Let's
at
just
least
try it.
at least we can see what the market will use, so
Exactly. And I think people deserve to have that representation of this is there are options here.
Yeah.
And you being a young father, you kind of understood where we were with the space and where maybe the area of town which you live into would be the next place that we could go find what we needed.
Well, so for all the listeners, so we ended up getting a record price that still has not been beat, and I don't think will be beat.
Yeah.
And then we go to the neighborhood that I live in, epic home that seemed like it was peak pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember the conversation, should I do this? I'm like, Scottie, do it.
Yeah.
And I think you wanted 250 less.
Yeah,
I'm
just throw out the offer.
Yeah, but I'm like, trust me, take the deal.
Yeah.
Now that thing's worth
it's been
$2.5, $3 million more.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Setup.
Yeah.
So no, I think having someone like yourself that articulates different families' positions in life at their moments with their kids, what they're looking for, and then striking when you have to.
And it kind of goes further because the other day you text me, I'm coaching my daughter's football team.
Yeah.
And you're like, Izzy didn't get into the school. Where should she go? Right. And it's funny because this is kind of how relationships work. And this is why I think law of exposure, you should reach out. You should ask people. I happen to be with the husband of a gal that sits on the board of the best feeder school you can go to, which they had just 2 days before filled it. And you told me when you came in here.
I just got back from there this morning. I had to walk through. Izzy was in these classes, playing with the toys, hanging with the kids. And I'm like, man, Tim, you really pulled that off for us.
Okay, so now I'm going to put you on the spot because this has been a big theme among a lot of successful people that I've talked to. If you were to put the same, and I'm not saying you don't, so don't take this as, if you were to put the same time and energy, commitment, focus into your relationship, into your family, what would that do?
I mean, I'd be super dad. I would be a super dad. Yes.
Because in my last, it's funny because and this will go personal. So, marriage isn't easy, and I got the
No, of
greatest
course.
wife on the planet for me. Like, I am the dad that I am because of my wife,
Yeah.
and I'll give her all credit, right? She really is. She came, Casper, Wyoming, similar. Dad works in the oil field, right? And she just had these ideas and expectations. And I always want to be a great dad, but like without her support and her expectations, I wouldn't be. But one of the things I've found challenging for me is I'm so good with my clients, right? Clients are always right.
Yeah.
I'm so good with my kids that I find that in my personal relationship, when it's been challenging, there's always reasons for me not to be that for her.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right. And you find that, but then in reality, when you have all that we have and life is so short,
Yeah.
and it's like really the only thing is our relationship.
Yeah.
So one of the things I liked about what you said is like, it sounds like you have a real bond with your mom that's unlike most, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, there's two parts to this story. Is I can always be a better partner for sure.
Yeah.
Christina, if I could, we have a great relationship, but then I just find out the other day that I've never taken her on a one-on-one vacation, and I'm like, I had to. I'm like, what? Yeah, we're always with friends, and I'm like, you have to cherish the fact that we have a lot of friends for one.
Yeah.
But wow, have I not? And she's like, no, and I'm like, does a concert count, or And she's like, no, like we haven't like shot to like Vegas or somewhere, and then life starts moving so fast, right?
Yeah.
And kids and this, and when I often wake up and I have things to do during the day, I should remind myself that one of the most important things I have during the day is like checking in and being a badass like partner, because that's going to affect my life more than answering a call or doing this. So that's a good topic of conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to give a challenge because we're in the same boat. We live in the
Yeah.
same neighborhood, and I'll watch your kids when you go because
Yeah, of
Beckham
course.
and Izzy. All right.
Yes.
But I would say missing curfew,
Yeah.
but like a relationship by design,
Yeah.
right? The same way you're designing your future is
Yeah.
the same way. And Christina's worth it.
Yeah,
She's-
yeah, totally.
She's a great one. And the family's a great one.
Yeah.
So last final kind of thoughts. Is there a motto? Is there a quote? Is there something that you live by and you've always lived by that you would share?
That's a good question, my man. No, you know what? As a hockey player, it was, I had one NHLer come in and talk to our team when we were kids, and it actually it lasted because we ended up winning this tournament. It was a world tournament. We're 12, and he said, like, it was Craig Simpson, good-looking dude. He's always on TV now still, but he said, came in to speak to 12-year-olds, and he's like, he probably didn't know what to talk about either.
Yeah.
But he's like, kids, like, you guys, you're from this hometown, small town in Alberta. I played for the Oilers, and my career's now recently over, but, take this day in, like, seize this day with your buddies here and this little group you have and this opportunity that lies ahead in this hockey game. Seize this day and this moment, because once it happens and the season's over, the game's over, it's gone. It's now a memory, right? So live every moment like it's your last, because it is that moment with these buddies. And hockey, like, after every year, those teammates will never play together again. Like, that group of guys, there's always one gone here, gone. And it's when you leave, so seize those moments and enjoy them to the max, because life moves fast and moves on, and so seize the day and seize the moment.
But that's exactly the theme of missing curfew. Why are you missing curfew? To enjoy. And I think we need to remember that, as well as giving back and leaving people better, right?
Yeah.
So where can people find you? Obviously missing curfew.
Yeah. So we're everywhere.
They'll find you at every member guest in Southern California.
Sure. Yeah, Bel Air member guest. No, so our podcast is all over the place: YouTube, Spotify. We'll be up in Toronto doing a live show for the playoffs. We're going to be at the PGA Championship, which is going to be in Rochester, New York. We'll be there in May. So we're all over the place. And then I did want to touch on the family office part, which has been a great experience, kind of jumping into like things I'm interested in, right? Finance, opportunities, learning about guys, the needs of either athletes or young entrepreneurs, having conversations with some of the smartest finance guys on certain deals or what they expect markets to do, how to, form good tax structure, how to take care of people's, business management. So that this has been I used the service while I played for 10 years, basically quarterbacks your life, and helps you make smart, educated decisions in and around finance or family or any of that stuff. So that has been a great journey. That business is called Target Partners, and we've got 15 clients now that we help out, and that's been a kind of an eye-opening journey there.
And with that, I think that's something to mention, because a lot of these professional athletes are going from making no money to having money.
Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily have the skill set to preserve that, right? So finding people that are smarter than them, that they really can trust, that are looking out for their best interests, to put steaks in the freezer.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because one thing that's great about steaks in the freezer, they're going to be there when you need them.
Yeah.
But what the 2.0 version of that, steaks in the freezer actually multiply. And I took that straight from Mike Berchtold, because he's a mentor, and I love it. So I appreciate you being here today.
Of course,
and I got to give you one
pleasure.
accountability thing. By what date are we going to have that trip for you and Christina? We're going to keep you accountable.
Yeah.
Give me a date.
Well, I was going to maybe go to Adele this weekend, but the tickets are like $10,000.
I just need a date. But by what date are you going to take her on?
It'll be probably before June.
Before
So,
June.
yeah.
Okay, so Christina's listening. We're going to keep you accountable. Thanks again, my man.
My man.
Appreciate
Tim,
it.
thank you. Love what you're doing, buddy.
Thanks for listening to Room, presented by the Smith Group. This episode was hosted by Tim Smith and produced by Michelle Akers. Chris Stacy is our studio director. Editing by Jake Austin. Special thanks to Pacific Staging and Sandy Newport.